Madeleine McCann disappeared without a trace. But what if the truth has been right in front of our eyes all this time? On that fateful night, something terrible happened. Something that escaped everyone's gaze, or almost everyone. If you, like me, are fascinated by dark mysteries and want to delve into stories that few dare to unravel, subscribe now and activate the notification bell. Each of our investigations is a new step in the search for the truth. It was supposed to be just another quiet night. Simple routines, soft laughter echoing through the streets of a village in Portugal. But by dawn, an inexplicable emptiness took over. A child had disappeared, and the whole world would never be the same again. Madeleine McCann disappeared. No screams, no signs of struggle, just the emptiness of a bed that should have been occupied. What really happened that last night? Could it be that somehow we let the truth slip away? Since I heard this story, one question has kept me awake. How can something so terrible happen in front of so many people without anyone noticing what was really happening? Today, we are going to dive into the details of that night in search of answers that may have been hidden all along. And perhaps the last person who saw Madeleine is closer than we think. Prepare for a journey into the unknown. Everything began on the night of May 3rd, 2007, in Praia da Luz, Portugal. It was supposed to be an ordinary night, a moment of rest for the McCann family on their vacation. The couple Jerry and Kate McCann, along with their 3 young children, were staying in apartment 5A of a resort known as Ocean Club. They had no idea that that night would forever be marked as the beginning of one of the most mysterious cases in the world. The routine seemed peaceful. After a day of activities at the resort, Madeleine, then only 3 years old, was put to bed along with her twin siblings, Sean and Emily, around 7:30 p.m. Jerry and Kate planned to dine with a group of friends at the Tapas restaurant, which was about 50 meters away from the apartment. Before leaving, they checked if the children were okay and left the bedroom door slightly open. The idea was to maintain a rotating watch during dinner. Dinner started at 8:30 p.m. Between conversations, the group agreed to periodically check on the children. Around 9:05 p.m., Jerry made the first visit to the apartment. He reported that everything seemed normal, with Madeleine and the twins sleeping peacefully. The bedroom door remained ajar, exactly as it had been left. At 9:30 p.m., Matthew Oldfield, a friend of the couple, offered to check on the children. He said he saw the twins sleeping, but Madeleine? He wasn't sure if he saw her. Was something already wrong at that moment, but no one noticed? This seemingly small detail is one of the first points that raised doubts. Did he really look carefully, or was something already wrong and went unnoticed? At 10 p.m., Kate McCann walked toward the apartment, unaware that she was about to live the worst nightmare of a mother. Upon entering, something was wrong, very wrong, and her life would never be the same. Upon entering the apartment, she noticed something strange. The bedroom door was more open than it should have been, and when she looked at Madeleine's bed, she saw that it was empty. Desperation was immediate. Kate ran back to the restaurant, shouting that her daughter had disappeared. It was the beginning of chaos. The news spread quickly, and the entire resort began searching for Madeleine. Neighbors, staff, and guests scoured every corner, from the surroundings of the apartment to more distant areas. However, no concrete, but their arrival and procedures raised many criticisms. One of the most mentioned errors is that the disappearance site was not immediately isolated, which may have compromised potential evidence. Another point that raises questions is the response time. Some reports indicate that there was a delay in activating alerts and conducting a broader search. In a case where every minute counts, this could have made a difference. The first hours are considered crucial in child disappearances, but in Madeleine's case, those hours seem to fade away in confusion and disorganization. What makes this story even more mysterious are the inconsistencies in the testimonies. While Jerry states that the door was ajar during his check, Kate reports that it was wide open upon her return. Did someone enter during that interval, or was it a detail lost in the tension of the moment? Additionally, there is the issue of the children's bedroom window, which Kate claims she found open with the curtain fluttering. This window, which faced a side street, was quickly considered a possible escape route. One of the most intriguing points is the movement reported by some witnesses that night. Shortly before 10 p.m., a British tourist named Jane Tanner, who was also part of the McCann's group of friends, reported seeing a man carrying a child wrapped in a blanket. The description is vague, but the time coincides with the interval when Madeleine could have disappeared. However, this clue, known as the Tanner sighting, has been questioned over the years, with experts raising doubts about its accuracy. Furthermore, there are reports of suspicious activities at the resort days before the disappearance. Some guests mention individuals who seem to be watching the apartments, but this information was not properly investigated at the time. This initial oversight is still a cause of much criticism of how the case was handled. As hours turned into days, the case began to attract worldwide attention. However, that first night was one of complete despair and disorganization. The McCann family faced the pain of not knowing their daughter's whereabouts, while the police dealt with the pressure of responding quickly to such a delicate situation. Why was the door more open than it should have been? Who was the man carrying a child? And above all, how did Madeleine disappear without a trace in such a short time span? These are the questions that continue to echo and that we will attempt to understand in the following moments of this story. That night, while the world seemed to sleep, small details began to cast doubts on the official version of Madeleine McCann's disappearance. What seemed to be a succession of simple events started to show flaws and contradictions that intrigued investigators and the public over the years. The first doubt arose in the very dynamics of the checks. Jerry McCann stated that he checked the room around 9:05 p.m. and said everything was in order. He mentioned that the bedroom door was slightly open, as they had left it before leaving. However, Kate, upon returning at 10 p.m., found the door wide open. The question is, how can this difference be explained? Did someone enter during that interval, or were the witnesses' memories affected by trauma and the tension of the moment? Another important inconsistency involves Matthew Oldfield's account, a friend of the couple, who offered to check on the children at 9:30 p.m. He said he looked into the room and saw the twins sleeping, but doesn't remember seeing Madeleine. This is where a doubt arises. Why didn't he confirm if all the children were in bed? Did he just take a superficial look, or perhaps something was already wrong and he didn't notice? Jane Tanner's account, part of the group of friends, is another point that divides opinions. Tanner stated that around 9:15 p.m., she saw a man carrying a child in his arms, heading towards a side street near the McCann's apartment. The description was vague: a white man with dark hair and light clothing. The child seemed to be wrapped in a blanket, barefoot. Although it seems like an important detail, this information was initially ignored by the local authorities. It only gained relevance days later when Jane insisted on the account. And then another question arises: how did such a crucial detail go unnoticed in the heat of the initial investigation? The story of the bedroom window is also a piece of this complicated puzzle. Kate McCann stated that upon entering the room, she found the window open and one of the curtains fluttering. This was strange since she herself said she had left the window closed before leaving. For the police, there were no clear signs of forced entry on the window, but some experts argued that the lack of fingerprints or signs of use did not eliminate the possibility of someone having entered. Or was the supposed kidnapper there, or was the window open afterward to simulate something? And then we have the responses from the Portuguese police, which began to be criticized almost immediately. During the first hours of the investigation, the disappearance site was not isolated, allowing several people to enter and exit the apartment. This potentially compromised any evidence that could have been collected. Additionally, there are reports that the initial searches in the area around the resort were not as extensive as they should have been. Why wasn't this care taken? Was it due to a lack of experience in handling a high-complexity case, or was something deeper at play? Another eyebrow-raising detail is the account of other Ocean Club guests. Some people mentioned seeing strange individuals roaming the area days before the disappearance, but these reports were also not thoroughly investigated at the time. A guest even reported seeing a man standing in front of the McCann's apartment, watching attentively, but this information was not cross-referenced with Jane Tanner's account or other evidence at the time. The contradictions are not limited to the night's accounts. As the investigations progressed, doubts began to emerge about the authorities' response time. According to some testimonies, the police only arrived at the scene almost an hour after the disappearance was reported. Furthermore, the international alert took even longer to be issued. This is especially serious in cases involving children, where every minute can be crucial. Why was there such a delay? Was it pure inefficiency or an underestimation of the situation's gravity? Another point that fuels the mystery is the behavior of some witnesses. Some say that the McCann's group of friends, known as the Tapa 7, were not entirely honest in their accounts. Some versions presented slight differences when compared to each other, such as the exact times of the checks and who was actually present at certain moments. While these discrepancies can be attributed to stress and confusion, they also generated speculations. Were they all telling the truth, or is there something that wasn't fully disclosed? Madeleine's disappearance is like a puzzle where some pieces don't seem to fit. With each contradictory account, each neglected detail, the doubts accumulate. Could it be that all this was the result of human error in a sequence of unfortunate events? Or is there something more, something that has yet to be discovered? Meanwhile, the open window, the man with the child, the failures in the initial investigation, and the conflicting memories remain shadows over that night. What really happened there still resides on the edge between the known and the unknown. Madeleine McCann's disappearance has given rise to various theories that still divide opinions today. Each one tries to fill the gaps left by the initial investigation's inconsistencies and the night's mysteries. Some of these hypotheses have gained strength over the years, while others have been discarded, but all leave an unsettling question. Which one truly makes sense? One of the first theories raised was that Madeleine was the victim of a planned kidnapping. The idea was simple. Someone had observed the apartment and noticed that the children were left alone for short periods while the adults dined at the tapas restaurant. This someone could have taken advantage of a few minutes to enter the apartment, grab the girl, and leave unnoticed. The bedroom window was pointed out as a possible escape route, although the lack of concrete evidence such as fingerprints, weakened this line of thought. Even so, Jane Tanner's account of the man carrying a child fits well with this theory. But here the problems begin. If someone really planned this kidnapping, how did they do it so precisely, knowing exactly the times of the checks? Was it a coincidence that the man carrying the child was seen precisely during that interval? And more, why didn't anyone else at the resort notice something unusual? Another widely debated theory suggests that Madeleine may have left the apartment alone that night. Like many small children, she could have woken up in the middle of the night and gone in search of her parents, who were at the restaurant. In this hypothesis, something tragic could have happened along the way, such as a fall, an accident, or even an encounter with someone with bad intentions. The open window reinforces this idea for some people, but there is a detail that weakens this theory. The twins continued to sleep soundly all night. Could it be possible that Madeleine left without making any noise? And then we have the most controversial theory of all, that the parents themselves were involved, directly or indirectly. The Portuguese police began to work with the possibility that Madeleine might have died accidentally inside the apartment and that the disappearance case was an attempt to cover up the tragedy. The most cited evidence in this theory is the use of sniffer dogs that allegedly detected traces of blood and the smell of a corpse in the apartment and in a car rented by the McCanns weeks after the disappearance. However, this theory also has flaws. First, the traces found were not sufficient to be conclusive. Second, there was no evidence that Madeleine had actually suffered an accident. And above all, would it be plausible that two desperate parents could stage such a complex disappearance in such a short time? Another possibility raised by some investigators is that Madeleine was a victim of human trafficking. The resort's location, near international routes, made this theory gain strength. The kidnapping could have been planned by a criminal network that quickly took the girl out of the country. This idea is supported by the fact that blonde, light-eyed children are often targets of trafficking due to their high demand in certain illegal markets. Despite this, no concrete evidence has ever been found to connect Madeleine to this type of crime, and no solid clues have been raised in this regard. There is also the possibility that someone connected to the resort was involved. During the investigations, it was discovered that there were records of employees accessing restricted areas of the site without apparent reason. Additionally, guests reported seeing unknown people circulating around the resort in the days leading up to the disappearance. But again, these clues led nowhere. Finally, one of the darkest theories is that Madeleine may have been the victim of a local predator. Cases of pedophilia and abuse in the Praia da Luz area had been reported before, and a profile of a criminal who acts opportunistically would fit this hypothesis. The problem is that, as with so many other possibilities, there is a lack of concrete evidence to support this line of thought. What all these theories have in common is the lack of definitive answers. Each seems to rely on a part of the puzzle, but none manage to fill all the gaps. Did Madeleine really leave the apartment alone? Or did someone who had been watching her for days seize the perfect opportunity to take her? The doubts remain, and each clue seems to raise more questions than answers. To this day, the theories are debated and investigated by specialists and curious people around the world. However, until the truth comes to light, the possibilities continue to fuel one of the greatest mysteries of our time. In recent years, a new piece of this complicated puzzle began to emerge, something that seemed to be hidden in plain sight, but only recently caught the attention of investigators and specialists. This revelation came from a former Ocean Club employee who broke his silence after more than a decade. He claimed to have seen something that night that was never officially reported. A man standing on the corner of one of the streets near the apartment, watching the building closely. This account may seem minor at first glance, but the time the man was seen coincides with the period when Jane Tanner spotted someone carrying a child. When asked why he never reported it before, the employee explained that he thought it was just a lost guest or someone waiting for someone. He didn't think it was relevant until years later when he began connecting that moment to the case's news. The most intriguing part is the description he gave. The man was thin, with dark hair, wearing ordinary clothes, nothing flashy, but there was something about him that caught attention, a nervousness, as if he was waiting for an opportunity. This information not only reinforces the hypothesis of a planned kidnapping, but also raises the question, who was this man? Was he working alone or part of something bigger? Shortly after this revelation, another piece of information came to light. Call records in the area showed suspicious activity within a time frame from 8 p.m. to shortly after 10 p.m. Two specific numbers made calls and received multiple calls, one of which was unregistered. This raised suspicions that something was being coordinated that night. Although there is no direct evidence connecting these calls to the disappearance, the coincidence of the times and the proximity to the crime scene sparked the authorities' interest. Then came another unexpected connection. A former British police officer working as a private investigator on the case revealed a curious pattern. In the months prior to the disappearance, two other incidents involving children had been recorded in the Praia da Luz area. In both cases, people reported seeing individuals lurking around properties where children were alone, but nothing at the time, and apparently did not receive the necessary attention. The connection between these incidents and Madeleine's disappearance raises a new hypothesis. Could it be possible that her case was linked to a pattern of planned actions? If so, this would indicate that the disappearance was not an isolated event, but part of something much larger and more organized. Another detail that reinforces this possibility was the discovery of a white van that witnesses reported seeing parked near the Ocean Club at different times that week. The van was described as old, with signs of wear, and seemed to belong to someone who was observing the activity. The van's owner was never identified, and it disappeared shortly after the case gained worldwide attention. With the emergence of this information, many doubts began to form about the initial investigation. Had the first days of the case been compromised by the lack of attention to these clues? How did no one notice the connection between the reports from the previous weeks and the suspicious movement around the resort? Additionally, the link between Madeleine and possible human trafficking networks was reinvestigated more seriously. International authorities began reviewing data on disappearances and reports of suspicious activities in other regions near Portugal. A report pointed out that in the months before and after the disappearance, there was an increase in reports of attempted kidnappings involving children in European villages near transport routes. This could be just a coincidence, but for investigators, it was impossible to ignore the similarity between the cases. The most recent revelations even brought another shocking element. A man already convicted of crimes against children, who lived in the region at the time, was interrogated again. He had been dismissed as a suspect in the first investigation, but new information suggests that he may have had some connection to the suspicious movement in Praia da Luz. This man has a history of observing targets before acting and has been seen roaming similar resorts. Each new clue that emerges seems to alter the original narrative of the case. The idea that Madeleine was taken by someone who had been watching the family's routine for days or even weeks gains more and more strength. What once seemed like a sudden disappearance now begins to unfold as part of something much more calculated and disturbing. But answers are still missing. Who was the man seen near the apartment? What was the purpose of the mysterious calls that night? And why weren't the connections to other disappearance cases made earlier? What started as a mystery involving a single family may now be revealing something much deeper. And these questions only increase the feeling that the truth might be closer than ever. The mystery of Madeleine McCann's disappearance continues to haunt us, even after so many years. The new clues and connections raised show us that perhaps we have been closer to the truth than we imagined, but there are still gaps that defy logic. And it is precisely this that keeps the case alive in the minds of so many. After all, how does a child disappear from such a busy place, leaving so few clues? Mystery hunters, I want to hear from you. Which theory makes the most sense? Was the kidnapping planned? Did Madeleine leave the room alone? Or is there something much bigger behind this story? If you've made it this far, comment, "I am a mystery hunter," so I know you've stayed with me until the end of this investigation. Madeleine's disappearance is a painful reminder that not all monsters hide in the shadows. Sometimes they are closer than we want to believe, but this case is still not closed, and in the next video, we will dive even deeper with details that could change the game. So subscribe now and help uncover the darkest secrets of the human mind. Oh, and if you have any mystery or case suggestions you'd like to see here on the channel, leave them in the comments. Who knows, your idea might be the next great mystery we investigate together. And for those who want to go even deeper, join our closed circle of investigators. Become a channel member and have exclusive access to content and theories that go beyond what appears on the surface. Now that we are all ready, let's move on to today's case. Enjoyed the mystery and want to support our work? Use Valo de Mai to contribute and have your comment highlighted, helping to keep our dark investigations always active. Stay tuned, because evil might be closer than you think. Until the next investigation, and don't miss the next video. If you like cases full of twists and unsettling secrets, it was made especially for you. Click and continue with me on this journey.